I never thought I'd have the courage to confront him, but when I did, I had no idea it would turn out like this. I can still remember the exact moment I decided I couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't something I planned, far from it. I had spent months trying to ignore it, burying my doubts, brushing off the signs, convincing myself that I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. That morning, I was sitting in the park, the sun was peeking through the trees, and the cool breeze made the leaves rustle, creating a peaceful, almost surreal ambiance. It seemed like the perfect morning, one where nothing could go wrong, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I had always felt like the world around me was calm, but inside, my mind was spiraling. It wasn't just a passing thought anymore. It was an overwhelming feeling that I had been lied to. I glanced over at him sitting across the park bench, his back casually leaning against the wooden slats, his phone in hand as he scrolled, oblivious to my growing frustration. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't just sit there pretending everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. I didn't even know what I was going to say to him yet. I hadn't planned it out, but I knew I was going to confront him. For months, I had been gathering pieces of evidence, little things that didn't add up, the late nights, the unexplained absences, the distance between us. It had been building for so long, and today it all came to a head. My heart was racing, my palms were sweating, and as I glanced at him again, I knew this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. I had spent so long convincing myself I didn't need to know the truth, but now, I couldn't live in the dark anymore. This wasn't just about finding out what he'd been hiding. It was about standing up for myself. I wasn't going to let this slide anymore. I wasn't going to walk away without getting the answers I so desperately needed. I met Ryan 2 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party. He was charming, easy to talk to, and had this way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the room. At first, I thought he was just a really good guy, someone I could trust. We hit it off instantly, laughing over jokes, sharing stories, even talking about our favorite books and movies. We became close quickly, like we had known each other forever. In the beginning, it was perfect. Every conversation felt genuine, every laugh felt real. But over time, I started noticing small things. It was nothing major at first, just little inconsistencies that didn't sit right. Sometimes he'd say something, and later, when I asked about it again, his story would change. Or he'd promise he would call, but then disappear for days without an explanation. The little things started to pile up. At first, I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe he was just busy, or maybe I was being paranoid. But the more I tried to ignore it, the more the cracks in our relationship seemed to grow. He was always busy when I needed him. I'd text him, but the replies would come hours, sometimes even days later, with the most generic responses. Sorry, I was swamped with work. I had to take care of something. But I knew deep down something wasn't right. Work didn't take up all your time. People made time for the people they cared about, didn't they? One evening, we had plans to meet up, and he stood me up. Not just once, but 3 times in a row. Each time, there was an excuse. Something came up, or I completely forgot. I didn't confront him then. I thought maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe it wasn't such a big deal. But it hurt. It was one particular Saturday that made everything come crashing down. I had been over at his apartment the week before, and while I was there, I saw a message pop up on his phone. Normally, I wouldn't have looked, but something about the message made me pause. It wasn't from a friend or family member. It was a name I didn't recognize, and the message just said, "Can't wait to see you later. I miss you." I froze. My heart sank into my stomach. I tried to push it aside, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The thought gnawed at me, kept me up at night. Who was this person? Why had he never mentioned them before? Why was he so careful with his phone when I was around? I didn't ask him about it. I didn't want to be the paranoid girlfriend accusing him of something without proof. But the truth was, I felt a knot in my stomach every time he smiled at me and told me everything was fine. I wanted to believe him, but my gut kept telling me otherwise. And then came the breaking point. Last week, I caught him in another lie. I had called him out on the phone, asking why he'd been late to meet me again, why I always had to settle for excuses. His response? I was out with a client. You know how it is. But then, just 2 days ago, I saw a post from a mutual friend, a selfie they took at a bar with Ryan smiling in the background. The problem? I knew for a fact he'd told me he was going to be working late that night. My blood ran cold as I stared at the photo, knowing that he had lied straight to my face. That's when I realized I couldn't let it slide anymore. This wasn't just about late nights or unanswered messages anymore. This was about something deeper. It was about trust, and right now I had none left. I couldn't just stand by and pretend I didn't see it. Something had to be said. I had to know what was really going on. The day of the confrontation felt like the universe had somehow conspired to make everything align perfectly, but it didn't make things any easier. My heart was pounding from the moment I woke up. It felt like every second that passed only made the tension in my chest grow tighter. I had spent the morning pacing back and forth in my apartment, trying to convince myself that I wasn't crazy, that this was something that needed to happen. But the more I thought about it, the more the doubts crept in. What if I was wrong? What if I was overthinking it all? What if there was an innocent explanation? I could already hear his voice in my head, calm and dismissive, telling me I was imagining things, that I was making a big deal out of nothing. What if I misunderstood the message? What if I was just too insecure, too suspicious, too paranoid? I paused for a moment, sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone as the screen lit up with a text from him. It was the usual, "Hey, what's up?" message. He had no idea what was coming, and that made everything even worse. The thought of confronting him made my stomach twist into painful knots. But then, a small voice inside me whispered, "You can't back out now. You've waited too long. You have to know the truth." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my decision settle on my shoulders. I had to do this. There was no way around it anymore. I couldn't keep waiting for the right moment or the perfect words. I had to face it, face him, for myself, for my peace of mind. I texted him back quickly, "Meet me at the park in an hour." I didn't even give myself time to overthink it. I hit send and stared at the message for a moment, my finger hovering over the screen. What if he didn't show up? What if he made some excuse? I shoved the thought away. This was happening, and there was no turning back now. The park was only a few blocks away, so I decided to walk. The sun was still bright, casting long shadows on the pavement as I made my way there. The cool breeze felt like it should have been soothing, but instead, it only made my nerves more raw. My palms were slick with sweat, and I kept wiping them on my jeans. My heart was racing, and each step felt like it was taking me closer to some sort of reckoning. When I got to the park, I walked around for a few minutes, trying to calm myself down. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, children laughed in the distance, and people were walking their dogs or sitting on benches, enjoying the afternoon. It should have felt like a peaceful, ordinary day, but my anxiety was clouding everything. I checked my watch. He was late, of course. My mind immediately went to the worst-case scenario. He was already ignoring me, already coming up with an excuse. I tried to shake the thought away, but it was hard. My stomach churned. I saw him walking toward me a few minutes later. He looked relaxed, carefree, just like he always did. His smile seemed so genuine, but I couldn't stop thinking about the lies, the secrets. He didn't know what was about to happen. He had no idea how much everything had been building up. As he approached, I could feel the tension in my chest tighten even more. My breath caught in my throat. I was too scared to look him in the eye. What if he denied everything? What if he said I was crazy? I wanted to run, to turn around and walk away before the conversation even began. But then I stopped myself. No. I straightened up and squared my shoulders. I was doing this. My mind flashed back to everything that had brought me here, the late nights, The lies, the messages I had seen, the feeling of betrayal I couldn't ignore any longer. This had to happen. "Hey," he said, a little too cheerfully, as if everything was just normal. But I could hear it. There was a certain nervousness in his voice that I hadn't noticed before. Maybe he could feel it too. I forced a smile. "Hey, Ryan." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The words I had rehearsed over and over in my head felt like they were stuck somewhere in my chest, too heavy to come out. Then I took a deep breath. The world seemed to pause for a second, and I just let the words spill out before I could stop them. "I know about the messages," I said, my voice a little shakier than I'd intended. His eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw something unfamiliar flash across his face, a flicker of panic. That was when I knew. This was it. The confrontation I'd been dreading, the one that would finally expose everything. I walked up to him, my heart pounding so loudly in my chest that it felt like everyone in the park could hear it. Each step I took was heavy, like my feet were filled with concrete. The sound of my footsteps echoed in my ears, reminding me that I was walking straight into the storm, and there was no turning back now. The air felt thicker than usual, almost suffocating, and I could feel my palms beginning to sweat, despite the cool breeze. My stomach twisted into tight knots as I approached him. I wanted to stop, I wanted to turn around and run, but my body kept moving forward, dragging me closer to the moment I had been dreading for weeks. I was so close now. I could almost hear my own breathing, shallow and rapid, over the background noise of the park. The trees swayed in the wind, their leaves rustling, but everything felt distant, as if the world had faded into the background. My focus was locked on him, Ryan. He was standing there, waiting, with that easy smile he always wore, but I could see the flicker of something in his eyes. Maybe it was the guilt, or maybe he could just feel the tension in the air. Either way, I knew he had no idea what was coming. I could barely breathe, my lungs squeezing tighter with every step I took. But I had to do this. I couldn't let the fear control me anymore. I stopped just a few feet away from him, my throat dry. "Ryan," I said, my voice coming out quieter than I wanted it to. He looked at me, his smile faltering for just a moment, and I knew I had him right where I wanted him. "Hey, everything okay?" he asked, too casually, as if he had no idea. "I know about the messages," I blurted out. The words felt like they were choking me as soon as they left my mouth. But I couldn't stop. I had to say it. I saw the text exchange with her. The one from last week. Don't try to deny it. His face shifted instantly. His smile dropped, replaced with a quick flicker of something fear? Annoyance? I couldn't quite place it, but it made my blood run cold. "Wait, what are you talking about?" he said, voice low and defensive. He shifted on his feet, and I could see him trying to compose himself. It was too late for that now. "I'm talking about the messages," I repeated, my voice stronger now, the anger bubbling up. "You told me you were just friends with her, but I saw the way you were talking to her. Don't lie to me, Ryan." I saw everything. His eyes widened just slightly, but his expression quickly turned cold. "You've always been paranoid, haven't you?" He shook his head, as if trying to shake off the weight of my accusation. "Honestly, I don't know why you're making a big deal out of nothing. You're imagining things." The words hit me like a slap to the face. I could feel my heart rate spike as my mind reeled from the disbelief. "Imagining things?" I repeated, incredulous. "Are you really going to stand there and tell me that after everything? After all the things I've caught you doing behind my back?" He scoffed, crossing his arms in front of his chest. "You're blowing this out of proportion. It's not a big deal. She's just a friend. And honestly, I think you've always been way too sensitive. I didn't think you'd react like this." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The words, the way he said them, made me feel like I was the one who was wrong, the one who had misread everything. He wasn't even acknowledging what I'd seen. He wasn't even sorry. "Don't gaslight me, Ryan," I said, my voice shaking with frustration. "I saw the messages. I saw how you were talking to her. I saw how she was talking to you. You can't just dismiss it like it's nothing. He let out a hollow laugh, clearly trying to deflect. Seriously? You're going to act like that's the worst thing in the world? You're always so dramatic. I don't even know why you're freaking out over this. You need to relax. I stood there, frozen for a moment, as if I had been slapped out of reality. Dramatic? I'm not the one hiding things behind everyone's back, Ryan. I'm not the one lying and acting like nothing's wrong. He stepped closer to me, now clearly irritated. You're making this about you when it's not. You've always had trust issues. Always. And you've got to stop projecting your own insecurities onto me. I'm not the problem here, you are. My chest felt like it was being squeezed, and the urge to cry was overwhelming. But I couldn't let him see that. I wouldn't let him win by making me feel like I was the crazy one. Are you seriously going to blame me for all of this? I whispered, barely able to get the words out. You've been sneaking around and lying, and now you're going to tell me I'm the problem? Ryan took a step back, crossing his arms again, and looked me over with something I couldn't quite read in his eyes. But the way he was looking at me made my blood run cold. There was no guilt, no shame, just a complete lack of empathy. No, he said slowly, a dark smirk forming on his lips. You're not the problem. I just think it's cute that you think you've got me all figured out. My head spun as I tried to process his words. Was he really saying that? Was he really trying to manipulate me into believing that I was the problem here? The realization hit me all at once. He wasn't even going to admit anything. He wasn't sorry. This wasn't a misunderstanding. He wasn't going to change. And that's when the weight of everything crashed down on me. He wasn't just lying to me, he was playing me. He was making me feel like I was the one in the wrong. My whole body felt numb. I had to get away from him. I couldn't do this anymore. Before I could say another word, I turned around and walked away, my heart in my throat. As I left, his voice followed me. Good luck with your trust issues, he called after me, the words dripping with mockery. The anger inside me flared, but I didn't look back. Not this time. I didn't need his validation. I didn't need his lies. I had finally done what I needed to do. But the question was, what was next? I was walking away, my steps quickening as I tried to get as far from him as possible. My head was spinning with disbelief, my chest still tight with the weight of everything he'd just said. I couldn't shake the feeling that the ground had shifted beneath me, that everything I thought I knew had suddenly become this chaotic blur. But as I neared the exit of the park, I heard his voice again, and this time, it wasn't just a casual remark. There was something in his tone, something almost triumphant. Wait, you think that's all? Ryan called after me, his voice now dripping with an unsettling confidence. I turned around, still trembling but trying to keep my composure. What are you talking about? I snapped, my anger bubbling up again. I was done with his games, done with the manipulation. But he wasn't done. Ryan took a few steps towards me, his face a mix of amusement and something darker. He had this look in his eyes, like he was about to reveal something that would shatter me completely. You think I've lied to you? He chuckled, the sound grating against my nerves. That's cute. What if I told you I've been seeing someone else for months, and it's your best friend? The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I felt the world tilt beneath my feet, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. My best friend? Sarah? No, it couldn't be. I shook my head, trying to make sense of the words, trying to figure out if I'd heard him wrong. What? What are you talking about? I stammered, my voice trembling. My brain couldn't process it. There was no way. Ryan's smirk only grew wider, crueler. Oh, I think you heard me just fine. I've been with her for months. And I'm guessing she's been feeding you all sorts of lies, hasn't she? His voice was smooth, almost too smooth, like he was enjoying this moment. The same way you've been feeding me your paranoia and trust issues. I felt like the ground had completely vanished beneath me. My legs shook, and I couldn't focus. All I could hear was the steady pulse of blood in my ears. All I could see was his mocking smile. It felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I turned to look around. half expecting someone to jump out and tell me this was some kind of sick joke, but the park was eerily quiet. I couldn't even form a coherent thought. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots. You and Sarah? My voice cracked as I spoke her name. No, this isn't real. This isn't happening. Ryan stepped closer, his expression now almost pitying. Oh, it's real, all right. But I think you've known for a while, haven't you? The way she acts around me, the way she keeps defending me when you get upset. She's been playing both sides for months, and honestly, I didn't think you'd ever find out. I could barely hear him. My world was spinning. My best friend? The one person I trusted more than anyone else? The person who had always been there for me? How could she do this to me? How could she betray me like this? It was too much to process. He took a step forward again, leaning in like he was savoring my shock. You know, it's actually kind of funny. You were so worried about me, about what I was doing behind your back, but the truth is, you were too focused on me to see what was right in front of you. You couldn't even see her pulling the strings. I stumbled back a step, the weight of his words crashing down on me like an avalanche. Why? Why would you do this? My voice barely made it past my lips. I didn't even know if I was talking to him or to myself. It was like I was losing grip on everything I'd ever known. Ryan didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood there, looking at me with a mixture of disgust and amusement. Because I could, he said simply, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. And because you made it so easy. You trusted me, you let me walk all over you, and now here we are. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout and confront him, to demand an explanation that made sense. But everything felt like it was falling apart. There was no explanation that could make this okay. There was no way to fix what had just been shattered. For the first time, Ryan's mask slipped. The charming, charismatic guy I thought I knew was gone. In his place stood someone cruel, someone who reveled in the pain he caused. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. He wasn't just playing games with me. He was playing games with my whole life. I wanted to run. I wanted to leave, to escape this nightmare, but I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were made of stone. I don't need your pity, I managed to say, my voice hoarse. I don't need anything from you anymore. Ryan smirked again, shaking his head. Too bad, because you're going to need a lot more than just pity to deal with what's coming next. Before I could even process what he meant by that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling like my entire world had just exploded in front of me. I didn't know what I was supposed to do next, but all I knew was that nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. And for the first time, I realized that the hardest part of all wasn't just confronting him. It was facing the fact that I had been living a lie this entire time. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to pick up the pieces of myself again. As I stood there, alone in the park, the sound of my heartbeat echoing in my ears, I couldn't help but wonder, had I ever truly known anyone at all? I don't even remember how long I stood there in the park, staring at the spot where Ryan had been. My mind was a haze of disbelief, and I couldn't make sense of anything. There was a strange emptiness in my chest, like something vital had been ripped out of me. I felt like I was floating, not really here, but not really anywhere else either. I don't know whether to cry, scream, or laugh at the absurdity of it all. The last few hours felt like a bad dream, a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. The way he'd stood there, smirking like he'd just won some twisted game. The betrayal of Sarah, of course, was almost too much to grasp. But what really hit me, what really stung, was the realization that I'd been living in a fantasy world for months, maybe even years, where I thought things were real, when all along they were nothing but lies. I sat down on a nearby bench, my legs giving way as the weight of the situation crushed me. The air felt too thick, too suffocating. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I thought I might actually pass out. I stared at the ground, willing my heart to stop pounding so loudly in my ears. Everything in me screamed for answers. Why didn't I see it sooner? How could I have been so blind? The shame and humiliation were overwhelming. The trust I'd given him, the love I'd put into this relationship, it felt like all of it had been a joke to him. A game. And I had been the fool, playing along, never suspecting a thing. But there was something else there too, buried beneath the anger and hurt. A strange, cold clarity that started to settle in the pit of my stomach. It's over. I whispered the words to myself, like a mantra. It's over. I didn't know what was worse, the fact that he did this to me, or the fact that I let it go on for so long. How had I allowed myself to be so blind to the lies, to the manipulation? I wanted to scream at myself, to shake myself awake. Why didn't you listen to the signs? Why didn't you trust your instincts? But at the same time, there was a strange peace in the truth. It felt raw and painful, but also liberating. For the first time, I could see things clearly. I wasn't the person I thought I was, the one living in this twisted version of reality. It was over. The sense of betrayal wasn't going to disappear overnight, but in that moment, I realized that I had the power to walk away. I didn't need Ryan. I didn't need Sarah. I didn't need any of the lies. And as much as it hurt, that was the truth I had been avoiding. I stood up from the bench, the world around me still spinning, but something inside me had shifted. The pain, the anger, the confusion, they were still there, swirling in the background, but they were no longer the things that defined me. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had control over my own life again. It wasn't going to be easy to heal from this. I knew that, but I also knew I could. I would. The walk home felt different. The weight on my shoulders wasn't as heavy anymore. I wasn't walking away from just Ryan and Sarah. I was walking away from everything they had built around me. I was walking towards something new, something real. I didn't have all the answers, and I certainly didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in ages, I felt like I could finally breathe. Maybe it was the air in the park, or maybe it was just the weight of that final confrontation. But whatever it was, I realized that this was my moment of clarity. The moment where I took back my life, piece by piece. And even though everything felt broken right now, I knew deep down that it was only the beginning of something new. Something better. The days that followed were a blur of confusion, anger, and moments of clarity. At first, I wasn't sure how to process everything. There were days when I woke up feeling like I had been punched in the stomach, and other days when I almost felt numb, like I had been living in someone else's body. But as the weeks passed, something started to shift inside me. I had to let go. And it wasn't just Ryan I had to let go of, it was everything he had represented. The life I thought we were building, the trust one had placed in him, the belief that we were meant to be. It was all a facade. And while it hurt like hell to admit that, I started to realize that my future didn't need to include any of that. I spent more time with my friends, the ones who had been there all along, the ones who never once doubted me. They listened, they comforted, and they made sure I knew that I wasn't alone. Slowly, I found my strength again, piece by piece. It wasn't about trying to forget or erase the past. It was about learning how to live with it. The idea of confronting Ryan in the first place had been terrifying. I didn't know how I was going to do it, let alone what the fallout would be. But now, looking back, I knew that it was the right choice. The shock of his reaction, the way he tried to manipulate me, it had been insane. But it had also been the final confirmation that I wasn't crazy. He was, and I wasn't going to let myself stay in that toxic environment anymore. I'd spent so long trying to make sense of what we had, trying to fit pieces together that didn't belong, that I forgot to ask myself one simple question. Is this really what I want? The answer was clear now. It wasn't. It wasn't the love I thought it was. It wasn't the connection I thought I had. It was a web of lies, and I had been caught in it for far too long. I don't know if I'll ever fully get over it. I confessed one evening to Emily, one of the few people who had been there for me without hesitation. But I'm learning to live with it. I can't change the past, but I can control my future. And that was the most liberating thing I could have realized. Over time, I began to rebuild. Slowly, gradually. I took things one day at a time, reminding myself that healing wasn't linear. There were good days and bad days, but even on the hardest days, I knew that I was making progress. It wasn't easy to sever the last of my ties with Ryan. I deleted his number, blocked him on social media, and, for the first time in a long while, I stopped wondering what he was doing or who he was with. I had to protect my peace, and that meant cutting him out completely. It was also in these moments that I realized how much I had grown. I had learned to trust myself again. I had learned that I was worthy of love and respect, not manipulation and deceit. I had learned that the truth, even when it stung, was something I could handle, and that sometimes the hardest choices were the ones that led to the most growth. I wasn't the same person I had been when I confronted him. I had learned the hard way that people's actions often speak louder than their words. And as much as I had wanted to believe in him, I now knew that the only person I could truly rely on was myself. Looking back at everything that happened, the confrontation, the betrayal, the fallout, I'm no longer consumed by the pain of it all. It's there, yes, but it doesn't define me. It was a chapter in my story, but it's not the whole book. And for the first time in a long while, I'm excited to see what the next chapter holds. Because no matter how crazy his reaction was, no matter how insane the situation became, I've learned one thing: I will never again settle for anything less than the truth. And that truth is that I deserve better. And I'm finally ready to move forward. I confronted him in public, and I don't think I'll ever forget that moment. The way my hands trembled, the way my voice shook, the way everything around me seemed to fade away as I spoke those words. It was insane, but in the end, it was the best thing I ever did. It's hard to put into words, but that confrontation marked a turning point in my life. It was the end of something, yes, but it was also the beginning of something else, something better. I'm still processing it all, but one thing is clear: I'm stronger now, more certain of who I am, and more aware of what I deserve. Sometimes I think back to that moment, his shock, his defensiveness, his inability to take responsibility, and I realize that, in a strange way, he did me a favor. He showed me exactly who he was, and in doing so, he set me free. We often stay in situations because we're afraid to confront the truth, afraid of what will happen if we face it head-on. But sometimes, the truth is the only thing that can truly set us free. I don't know if I'll ever fully heal from what happened. Some scars stay with you forever. But I also know that I'll never make the same mistake again. So, to anyone listening, maybe you're holding back, afraid of what a confrontation might bring. Maybe you're scared of what it might reveal. But I want you to remember something. Sometimes, facing the truth, no matter how painful, is the first step toward freeing yourself. It may feel impossible, but it's worth it. In the end, it's not about what they did to you. It's about what you do with what you've learned. And I'm learning to take my power back, one step at a time. I'd love to hear what you think. Have you ever had to confront someone in a similar situation? Or maybe you've been in a moment like this where everything changed in an instant. How would you have reacted if you were in my shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. And if you found this story relatable or empowering, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that remind us of our strength and resilience. Thanks for listening, and remember, sometimes the hardest confrontations lead to the greatest growth.